Hello everyone and welcome to SGTV. This is part of our Job Routes for Electricians series. And today we are going to be talking to Neil Bridgeman about being a rail electrician. So something a bit different here. And as we said in a lot of our episodes on this series, you don't just have to go into your standard route such as domestic once you become qualified. There are many different options to go to, and rail is one we're going to be speaking to Neil about now. So Neil, it's good to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. You all right?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thanks for asking me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we started filming this, I'd just like to point out that Neil was sort of bullying me, saying how much better his beard is than mine. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty down about that at the minute.
Oh, you'll get over it. You'll be fine.
So Neil, how did you? So what was your path to becoming where you are now into a rail electrician?
Well, my path started when I come out of school. And how old are you, Ben?
34.
So I'm 38, and when you get to school, you used to have these things called career advisors. I'm not really sure if they still have them now, but they used to send out these blue books. And you used to go down to your careers office. And I actually went for a job in Dagenham Falls in East London because my granddad worked there. And I thought I was going to become a motor electrician, but it wasn't. It was an old youth training scheme, YTS scheme. And I was training to be an electrician. So I started there. I then got a placement with a local company doing sort of new builds, flats, houses, all that sort of stuff. Done odd commercial things, odd industrial, but it was more or less domestic. Then I went into route of self-employed, doing schools and social housing for many years. And then back when jobs used to advertise in a newspaper, kids, there used to be a newspaper. If you wanted a job, you used to go and buy a noupaper.
I remember them days. I remember looking for part-time jobs in the newspaper.
We're not even that old, you know. It's amazing how different it's been in such a short space of time. And I went for a job for working for a railway contractor. And that was in about, I'd say, 2008, something like that. And I loved it. I loved the job. I loved the variety of the job. And in 2010, I started my own company and gave it a go on myself. So yeah, since then I've been strength to strength.
Are you enjoying it?
Oh, I love it. I love the game. I love everything about it. I love being an electrician. I'm not even going to pretend because my guys will probably watch this and go, he doesn't work on the tools no more. Why is he pretending? But I loved it when I was doing it, and I love it now. You know, it's a great industry to be in.
Yeah. So what does a day today look like for a rail electrician? Like as we said at the beginning of this episode, I think domestic tends to be the most common route for an electrician, but what would it look like for a rail electrician?
So my guys generally, we work sort of London and around. Eventually, rarely we travel beyond, but normally it's London and the surrounding areas, Kent, Sussex, Wessex, that sort of stuff. And so I would say they're probably up 5:30 in the morning to get to work as quick as they can, avoid the rush hour traffic. And it can be anything. It could be anything from emergency light testing to maintaining distribution boards and greasing up switchgear, to installing lighting schemes, platform lighting, concourse lighting on the big major stations, to EICRs and carrying them out. Some of the EICRs we do are non-stop for 6 months, 6, 7, 8 months on just one EICR. These places are so vast. It can vary from daytime to nighttime work to something that we call engineering hours, which is when there's no trains running or very, very limited trains running. You name it, we're probably going to be doing it somewhere along the line. The only things, it's funny because I've got 2 apprentices, 3 now actually, and the parts of they're struggling with is the parts that require plastic containment and twin and earth, which is probably the opposite for the majority of their colleagues at college, because they're doing lots of plastic containment, lots of twin and earth, but not so much of the heavier stuff.
So how are the EICRs different to your typical domestic then? For your landlords, that kind of thing. So how's that different?
Well, the fundamental what is interesting and different about it is that we've got an overarching responsibility to keep the railway moving. We can't just stop things, and obviously you've got critical servers, fire alarms, all these different things, lighting that will affect if they go down the running of trains and the safe movement of passengers around train stations. So fundamentally, most of our EICRs are around about the 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. window. So we can only do so much. And obviously, we've got to make sure that everything is back on working in a safe manner before the station opens. So it's a lot slower pace. It's a lot more controlled. And as anything, I'm a big believer of these things go well with good relationships. If you're a good electrician, if you communicate well, then a lot of these problems can be ironed out early on. But so that's where fundamentally in a domestic, you can sort of more or less go in when you want, a quick chat with the customer, and your way you go. With an ICR in a station or a signal box, these take many months of planning.
And what would you say are the main fundamental differences in terms of actual wiring? Because when we talk to industrial electricians and people like that, you're talking three-phase and things that are in cable trays, and although they might be easier to access in terms of you're not having to chase walls out and lift flooring and that kind of thing, you're still having to get cherry pickers and things like that. So it can be visually easier to see and get to. But in terms of the actual structure of the wiring and the systems you put in place, how do they differ from your typical domestic kind of job?
Well, you sort of covered quite a large amount of it in terms of we won't really touch any plastic containment. It's not permitted by net rail standards, so it's all metallic, and we've go from galvanised to stainless steel because a lot of the railway arches penetrate a lot of water. So if you're working because that's what they're made to do, to get rid of the water. So if you've got a railway track on a viaduct, they're made to drain water through. So obviously galvanised is only going to last so much. So we do quite a lot of stainless steel work, and especially if you go on the London Underground, you'll see almost all containment will be stainless steel, which is a complete nightmare to install. It's just awful stuff, but it looks really nice.
Yeah. Have you got to find any of them cool abandoned substations in the underground?
Oh, honestly, it's some of the stuff we see at Waterloo Station, right?
Yeah.
There is an old. So Waterloo Station is built on top of railway arches. There's loads of arches underneath, and under there they've still got the rifle range from the Second World War.
Yeah.
And there's still casings all over the floor. They've got an old school under there with the blackboard still on the wall from when
that's for when they
evacuated the children. And they've also got a full-size snooker table, which is not fit to play snooker anymore, which was part of the officers' mess.
Yeah.
So you've still got all these little hidden gems there. It's amazing. Bristol Temple Meads is another one. Some of the stuff underneath Bristol Temple Meads, because Bristol Temple Meads when it was built by Isamar Brunel, it was built on like really soaking ground. I think Meads is an old word for like a what's the word? Like sort of semi-soggy ground. And so it's built up, and you go underneath there and you've got like old cages with food that's like 100 years old, and where they used to do the food for the trains, and they've got these old carts. It's amazing what you find underneath some of these old stations. It really is.
Yeah, I bet it's enjoying to just see something different on your day-to-day job, isn't it?
I still like going to these signal boxes with the levers. You still see them, they're going to these big signal centres now, which are just humongous. They're massive, great things. But every now and again on Kent and Sussex and some on Wessex, you still see these old lever arch signal boxes, and there's something romantic about them. I love them.
Yeah. Have you found you've started sort of slipping into the kind of train spotting kind of slippery slope?
No, I'm not. Even if I would, I wouldn't admit it. But
that's a yes, isn't it? You really are.
Oh dear, yeah. No, but it's nice to see a good train. When you go to Victoria Station, you get the what's the famous train? I can't remember now. The Orient Express.
Yeah.
So that pulls in every now and again, and it's just like going around your nan's house. It's not so oldly worldly.
Yeah.
But when you see things like that, it's nice because you don't see them every day.
Yeah. I keep saying to my missus, I want her to pay for me to go on one of these trains where it's like Harry Potter or Polar Express, where some little lady comes with a food stall and gives me a hot chocolate. I want that to happen. But
it's annoying because on my line, I do Great Western, and they used to have a whole carriage which was just a bar. So if you was coming home late, you just go and sit at the bar, and all that. But they've done away with it now in favour of seats. So rude.
I know we're going off course here, but I think some of the first class ones, you get a free drink, don't you? A free alcoholic drink.
Yeah, but the ticket's like 5 times the price. So it's the least you can do. Yeah, I think.
Everyone takes the cans on in carriage anyway, don't they? So, but anyway, what sort of challenges do you find you facing doing this kind of work, doing rail electrician work?
So the organisation is where the challenges are, and making sure all the stakeholders, sort of the station, the retail units, the passengers, making sure everyone is on the same page and working towards the same goal, because ultimately we've got a responsibility to keep the railways running, as I said earlier, and it's not always easy because things do go wrong. It's just the nature of the beast, So the big challenge is trying to keep the station moving and completing the task and trying to get that balance right, because the client ultimately is the taxpayer is going to be paying for these works. We don't want to be taking the mickey out of that money. We want to be treating that money with responsibility, but also we need to deliver the works as well safely. So it's a balancing act, but that's probably the challenge is organising it and putting everything together so we get to the same result that everyone wants.
So with planning your actual systems, when you say, for example, you've got a couple of apprentices, you hire staff, and if you were running, like, say, a small domestic company, you might drop them lads off at a house and be right, okay, lads, you're responsible for that rewire or that consumer unit or whatever. And if they run into any obstacles, it's generally down to them, who are the boots on the ground, to solve that issue. Having spoken to an industrial electrician recently, he was telling me how it's kind of the opposite. It's down to management at the top tier to plan everything, or it might even be coming down from, I don't know, an architect or an engineer at some point, giving you the plans and you're just there to follow it. So is that the same case for you guys? Or would your guys underneath you be responsible for fault finding and that kind of thing?
So do you know what? That's an answer. All of it really. It depends on the contract and where we're working. We've got contracts that will be designed externally, and we may have some input in that, and then we will install as per the design. All that work has been taken care of up front. We have other stuff there where we're engaged to do the design or design and build. So as you build, you design it, and things may change and things like that. But we also do maintenance contracts in terms of you don't know what you're getting. We've got one at the moment where there's loads of lights out, and we're really struggling to find out where that is. I mean, you can't plan that from the desk, because you have to have an element of trust in your engineers to be able to act responsibility and have them that same mindset of making sure the client and the passengers and the staff are safe while we're doing these works. So we cover all them areas, to be fair.
How do you sort of maintain that safety? Because, like you say, you've got to keep these trains moving and the stations open. And if you need to close down a circuit, or however you're tackling that job, how do you go about making sure you guys are safe, but at the same time you still got power going to the necessary places?
Well, most of the works will be done sort of if it's down that road, engineering hours, when there's no limited staff on site. There's very limited trains, normally just engineering trains on running, and there's no passengers. So that's where the majority of the works would be. There is a judgment call sometimes where you'll go and you sort of got to risk assess it on the job and say, is this safe for me to do during the day? And then you cross that bridge as you come across it. But we have had some times where we've had to actually, no, this is not safe. We're shutting it, and we just isolate the power, and then it may well be that part of that station goes down. It's just we've done it at some of the biggest stations in the UK before, where we've gone, no, we need to shut this down. This is not safe, and ultimately, passenger safety will always come first, and that's what we've got to look at. Everything else can be sorted out, but we've got to make sure that no one's getting hurt.
Yeah, absolutely, and your guys as well. Yeah. You can't be expected to be working in situations going to put you at risk.
No, and this is one of the problems we have is trying to get people outside of the industry that have worked a while into the rail industry. It's quite a challenge because this is such a different mentality, it's such a different way of working. That's why I'm a big fan of the apprentice system, because I was finding struggles to try and get electricians from outside of rail into rail, and they're set in their ways, or they've got their ways of working, the ways they've been trained, which may well suit other industries. It just didn't suit us. So we're a big supporter of the apprentice industry to get people into the industry.
So how do you think that could be improved then, to get more apprentices down the rail route?
things like this is going to help. We've got to try and give people opportunities, but fundamentally, it's got to be on the contractors to take on apprentices. We've got to take responsibility for the industry we work in, and it's all very well looking externally to the ECA, to the NIC, to Scolmore Group, and all that. And it's great these organisations are doing these things, but as employers, we've got to be taking some responsibility. And for me, it's ultimately a bit of a selfish decision in terms of I want to continue working. I want to continue operating at the top of our game and do the best we can. And we think the way to do that is investing in apprentices.
Yeah. And I suppose making it an attractive offer as well for a young guy or girl or even people who are training later in life, however that may be, they might not necessarily know you can go into this route. And if you're sort of advertising an attractive package together, saying, look, here is a really good future, really good industry to work in, it's getting that message across, isn't it? But like you say, it's getting that message across.
Yeah, it's getting the message across. It's understanding that there is out there, and you know what, apprentices or trainers of any age, you don't have to think that it's only one route, like you said at the beginning. It's not just domestic, not phone railway companies, phone industrial companies, phone whatever you fancy doing, because the breadth of work that we cover is so vast and so interesting. No 2 days, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but no 2 days are really the same. Everything's different. I mean, I always loved, when I was installing, I always loved maintenance because it was a challenge. And you have that thing when you walk onto a station and trains are not running or passengers not coming in because of electrical fault, and they're looking at you as a team to sort that. There's something that always excited me. That always got my juices flowing, and that's what I love to do. You know what I mean? Being that person that people will go into and say, look, we need to keep doing this. We need you to do your stuff so we can keep doing this. And that's what always got me going. That's what I loved about the job.
So if one of these people who are thinking about getting into rail electrician work, I mean, there's companies like yourself. So if for anyone who don't know, do you want to just tell us a bit about your company?
Yeah, so my company's called UKES Rail, or UKES Rail, which basically it was UK Electrical Services. That's where the UKES comes from. So, but then in about 2003, 2013, 14, I decided to focus just on rail. So I added the rail because I wanted to be known as, I always got the advice that find something you like and you're good at and get tunnel vision. Yeah. And then you will excel at that, So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a business that was known for doing the best work we could on the railways. So yeah, that's what we do, and that's all we do. We don't do anything else but rail.
So for people who are looking to get into the industry, they could contact people like yourself looking for opportunities. But is it worth them? And I may be wrong here. Is it worth them speaking also to your rail companies themselves? Would they be able to point them in the right direction?
It's difficult because lots of Network Rail, their engineering expertise is large. They're doing all sorts from track installation to building stations and all sorts. But definitely in terms of it's not. You've got your major players. You've got your Balfour Beatties. You've got your Osbornes. You've got your Burst. You've got all these big companies that will have apprenticeship programs, no doubt. So yeah, reach out. No one's going to come knocking on your door to give you a job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go and get yourself out there because it won't hurt. Yeah, you may get hit back down, and you may get your ego dented a bit, but you know what? That's life. Keep knocking on them doors, keep ringing the phone, keep sending emails, and someone will bite.
Yeah, we did an episode recently. I can't remember which one it was, but they were saying they see it at college. The two types of electrician, doesn't matter what age they are, that they're striving, they're knocking on doors, they're ringing people, emailing people. They want the opportunity, and there's the others who are sitting back waiting for it to happen.
Yeah. And no one's knocking on your door asking, do you want a job? No one's ever going to do that.
No.
So yeah, if you really want something, you'll go and fight for it without doubt.
Exactly,
and don't be ashamed to. Don't be ashamed to. It's your life. It's your career. You should work for it. Exactly, it should be a job. It should be work that you want to do. So go and do it.
And whether that's the rail sector, industrial, commercial, domestic, any of the other options that we're going to be talking about on this Job Routes for Electricians series, you've got to have that same mentality.
Yeah, you got to, because otherwise you're going to be, if you're the last one knocking at the door, if you're the one sitting at home waiting for the phone today, you'll be doing it for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, because no one's going to come knocking. No one. So make a nuisance of yourself.
Yeah. Well, you'd rather people be sort of annoying you in the nicest possible way by saying, look, I want to work for you, I want this opportunity, rather than you having to go, knocking on agencies' doors and things like that where you might not know who's coming your way. So
One thing I would say is try to everyone out there who's thinking about things. Try and avoid the agency route. The agency route is, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, a big problem with the industry in terms of not having proper employment. You know, when you have proper employment, like all my engineers are employed PAYE, they all get all their training provided, they get all their expenses provided. You know, if I want to offer the best to the client, I'm going to make sure my guys are trained to the best that they can be. You're not going to get that with a casual relationship. You know, so really, if you're thinking about what it is to be a great electrician, a good engineer, then really think about proper employment, because it goes a long way. There is a difference in money in terms you may get that quick buck from an agency, but in the long term, by the time you get your 5-6 weeks holidays, by the time you get all your Christmases off, that's worth something. You know, all your training provided for, that's worth something. So really think about your future and where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the sort of products that you're installing. Not brands. We're not going down that route. I mean, sort of the actual products you're actually installing. Because, like we say, if you're talking domestic, you know, socket switches, lights, consumer units, that kind of thing. Commercial, industrial, you might be looking at charging points for machinery, power points for heavy duty machinery, that kind of thing. But if you know, I'm just looking off the top of my head here. If I'm walking around a railway station, I might see the odd socket or, you know, power for the TV monitors and things like that. But what else are you sort of installing there?
Well, let's start from the beginning. So in some of these big stations, you'll have your main incoming switch panel, and these switch panels will be 2,000 amps. You know, with big air circuit breakers as big as your laptop as is open. Great big air circuit breakers, 1,250 amps, 1,500 amp circuit breakers. And then you've got all your bus bar systems within that, and you've got your outgoing switch gear, switch fuses, steel wired armoured cables, metallic conduit, metallic trunking, ladder tray, normal tray, FP200, FP400, which is a fireproof SWA cable. And we do quite a bit of pyro, especially in terms of if you've got stations of historical importance like Waterloo, Victoria, when you don't want to be sticking a big conduit down a nice facade of the station. It's going to look horrible. So to look after that, we need to be installing pyro where it's required, you know. So yeah, the only thing we struggle to do is, I mean, we do plastic, don't get me wrong, because sometimes when you're on the arches, and it's quite a skill to bend a metal conduit. We do it, but it's quite a skill. But we have installed plastic before. But twin and earth is something we it's not actually permitted on the railway. It's excluded under the railway standards. So it's just something we struggle to get hold of. But
is that the same for inside the stations as well?
Yeah, it's excluded. It does. You will see it, because not everyone installs. Just like BS 7671, you get people that don't install as per they should, but yeah, it's actually specifically excluded to install twin and earth in a railway environment.
So this might sound a stupid question then. So the sockets that, you know, your kids are charging their phones on in the stations, how are they wired up then?
It all depends. It's a hard question. It could be FP200, it could be SWA, it could be conduit and singles in conduit. We've done a lot of them charging stations. We're doing some at Waterloo at the moment, and it'll be SWAs that we install, and they come up through the floors into these charging bays. But yeah,
I'm guessing that's just all down to, at some point at the start there was talks on, you know, how you're going to run these systems and reasons why and safety, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't actually even know why twin and earth is not permitted. I imagine it must be some reason for it, but I mean, if it's got the correct containment, I've got no issues in using it. But most railway systems would be designed for sort of medium to heavy usage, which would exclude plastic. It'll be metal and upwards. You know, a lot of GRP as well. We use a lot of GRP, especially on routes that are near the sea, because there's a high salt content in the air, so it really attacks the galvanised. You know, so GRP containment or stainless steel in them sort of areas.
And these are sort of things you don't initially think about, do you? You think of all the different elements and challenges that could affect your installation, and that all comes down to knowledge. I mean, are there any additional qualifications that you need to get into the sector you work in?
Not so much qualifications. You'd obviously be expected to sort of be, to use a phrase that's a bit controversial, a sort of gold card holder. That sort of, whether or not you've got a gold card is irrelevant, but hold them the qualifications that would get you a gold card. But in terms of obviously got your safety aspect, so we sponsor our own staff. So a lot of people will have heard of Sentinel or PTS, which is your personal track safety permit system. So we do all that in-house. So you'd have that course. It's a 2-day course, 1 day for tracks with overhead lines or no DCCR, which is your direct current circuit rail. So which we call your third rail, So it's a second day for if you want to work on third rail environment. So you do have that sort of stuff, but that's more in terms of safety competencies rather than electrical competencies. And then you get your PASMA, you get your IPAF, you get all these sort of things that you're going to need to work in an environment we do, because there's lots of working at height, lots of MOOPs needed and lots of towers needed.
So the customers that you're working with, so you're an independent firm. Are you subcontracted from the likes of? I'm rubbish with the train firms like Network Rail, Midlands Rail, whatever they're called. So you basically subcontracted from them.
So if you think about the railway, like your electricity supplier, you've got your companies that own the cables, and then you've got your companies you buy your electricity off. So Network Rail own the lines and the buildings, and then you've got your train operating companies like your Great Western that will provide you with trains, okay? So that's how it works. So you get your TOCs, which we call train operating companies, and then you get your client or your owner, which is Network Rail. The majority of our work we do is for Network Rail. About 20% of our work is for train operating companies. So yeah, Network Rail is our main client, and we work through principal contractors, I suppose the word you're looking for. So we're a subcontractor. We work through principal contractors, but we also, Network Rail do a fantastic scheme, which is called an smaller SME scheme. So they've got a target to spend X amount of their spend through small and medium enterprises. So we're allowed to work through that scheme directly for Network Rail. We get some of the smaller schemes, which is a great really incentive for Network Rail to have that to get money out to smaller companies. So we take advantage of that. Again, that's probably about 10% of our turnover is through that scheme. So we work direct for Network Rail and through principal contractors.
Yeah. And before we finish this episode, we talked a bit about knocking on people's doors and ringing phones and things like that. But what advice would you give to anyone, not only thinking about getting into the industry itself, but also getting down into your specific sector? What sort of advice would you give?
I'm a bit old-fashioned in terms of how people should approach this. So I always believe in, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Wear a shirt, wear trousers, don't go in jeans and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, do your homework. Never go to any job blind. Don't always know a little bit about them. Do a bit of research on the railway. All the people that I've employed, either adult training, because I've employed adult trainees before, or youngsters, they've always done a bit of knowledge about what we're about, who we work for, what sort of jobs we do. That goes a long way to tipping you above it. It shows a prospective employer that you've done a little bit extra work than someone else. So yeah, do your homework on the company, and yeah, just don't be ashamed to call them. Don't be ashamed to ask for feedback. Don't be ashamed to follow up in a week or 2 weeks or a day, whatever's comfortable for you. Don't be ashamed to do that, because, a good employer won't mind giving you that feedback. And if they don't give it, if they're not willing to give that feedback, then maybe they're not the employer for you.
And it's a rewarding and enjoyable career to take, would you say? Yeah,
I love it. My engineer's the longest one who's worked for me, has worked for me since he was 16. He's 31. The shortest person who's worked for us is 5 years. So we've got a great team that really love to work with each other, and hopefully they love to work for the company, and that ultimately transfers to the client. If they see a happy, content, good workforce, then that goes down into the work. So
well, you do, don't you? It's if you're on a job or working for a company and you see a company that is subcontracted or whatever, you can tell if they're a good team or not quite quickly. Like you say, first impressions do make the world a difference. So whether you're on a job working for someone and you're representing that company, or if it's your own company, or if you're a prospective employee going for a job, or even a prospective student looking for some kind of apprentice, that first impression and that knowledge and respect does go a long way. Like you say, I'm a big believer in that as well.
Yeah, I am. It's something I always do now. Even if I go to a meeting for the first time, I may not wear a shirt and tie all the time, but if I'm going to meet someone the first time, it's always a shirt and tie. Always, It's only one chance you got to make that first impression. You can never do it again. And as I always, if someone, I'll tell you a tip. Is in terms of the way we are now, in terms of these virtual meetings. So a lot of the interviews I've done for our latest apprentices were over Zoom like this, okay? And what what I found is that some people was really prepared. They was in a quiet room. They were smart. They were set up, ready to go. Other guys and girls were a bit on their phone. They were sort of at the kitchen table, not really prepared, and that's a good tip in terms of how we're looking to do things going forward, is that, even though it is a bit casual in terms of over the computer, try to keep that professionalism. You want to become a professional trade, so hold yourself professionally. Make sure you're prepared. Sit down in front of a computer. Make sure you got no things driving you nuts, or the washing machine in the background, or Jeremy Kyle on the TV in the other room. Make sure you're dedicated to what you're doing.
Yeah, I tend to have this sort of conversation with my daughter a lot of the time about having that domino effect of that one decision and how that can spiral. It might, turning up to an interview prepared, for example, might get you that job. You might earn more money than you were thinking that you might be able to. You might be able to afford that car, that house, that might take you in a different direction. You might meet friends on that job, that will be with you forever. And it is such a, it sounds cheesy when you talk about it like that, but it's the truth.
I call it the butterfly effect.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a story about that. Okay, so everything I've got now, I can choose go down to one decision in my life. Okay, now I'm blessed with what I've got. The electrical industry's given me everything I've got. Okay, but I used to work for a company doing social housing in East London, and I still loved it because I loved to work, but it was tested. It was trying work. It was difficult work. Under seeing some horrible things, and but me and the manager at the time, we never got on. We got on, but we was like dog and cat. You know what I mean? We got on really well, and then we'd fight. And then we got on really well. And after about the 15th time that week of having an argument, I walked out and I walked straight across the road and I bought that newspaper I spoke about earlier, and I got that job in the Route. And then 15 years later, I'm now doing what I'm doing. And I'll go back to everything I've got now. And I even moved for this job. So I live in Wiltshire now. I used to live in Romford. My son now goes to a local school. I've got a wife here. I've got a whole new set of life here. I can trace back to walking across that road and buying that newspaper. Yeah. Everything I've got now is down to that one thing. And I call that the butterfly effect.
No, exactly, mate. That's something I tend to carry with me quite a lot, that kind of mentality. And, I hope people watching this, they'll sort of take that into consideration with their career ideas, that kind of thing. So
don't underestimate the small things. Because those small things, and that's what I mean by the butterfly. The small flap of the butterfly's wing can be a gale force wind the other side of the world. That's what that phrase means. And don't underestimate the small little things you get right, what they can create. Really, really do try and get the small, simple things right, because they do create bigger things going down the line.
Exactly. Not to be confused with that film, The Butterfly Effect. That was pants. Don't ever watch that. Anyone watching that, don't watch it.
How dare you? That is a great film. It's a great film.
Rubbish.
But that's the same. But it's the same. That's what that means. Because obviously he changed little things in his past, and it made great big consequences in the future. And
doesn't he end up becoming a baby at the end or something like that?
God knows. Let's not spoil it for anyone.
Anyway, so before we finish, where do you see the future of the rail electrics industry?
I see the future bleak in terms of skills. It's a real problem we've got in terms of skills. We need youngsters. We need people, not only youngsters, we need people that are willing to come into the industry and learn. So that's why, as I said earlier, I've invested in an apprenticeship program, because I want to protect the business for the future. I don't want to be relying on poor skills, having to cherry pick from that. So, I honestly think if you can get into this industry and you can make a real impact in the future, because as supply and demand dictates rates, and as supply goes down and demand goes up, the rates are going to go up. So I really feel it's going to be a good opportunity for people to earn some real good money in an industry that's always tackling with what the rate is. So I think there's some great opportunities for people that want to get in there, but as the sector, I think it's going to struggle with skills. So come on board, please.
Yeah, opportunities there for the taking.
Yeah.
Okay. Right then, I want to thank you for coming on today, Neil. Anyone out there who has found this interesting, please make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification button. There's going to be more videos like this in part of our Job Routes for Electricians series. As we said before, commercial, domestic, agricultural, many other different opportunities, many different speakers we're going to have on the show. So keep your eye out for that. Neil, thanks for coming on, mate. And
pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.